Okay, I guess we'll get started. All right, so I'm going to call this meeting to order, the Planning Commission meeting of April 14th. Start out with a roll call. Darcy, could you please do the roll call?
Commissioner Lopes,
Here.
Commissioner Pack,
Here.
Commissioner Wilson,
Present.
Commissioner Stevens,
Here.
Commissioner Founds,
Here.
Commissioner Lee,
Present.
Commissioner Satter,
Present.
Commissioner Murphy,
Present.
and Commissioner Peterson.
I'm here also. Okay, what would you have done if I would have said I'm not present? Anyway, sorry, couldn't resist. Okay, so this is an opportunity for public comment. So if we have any attendees, excuse me, that would like to provide comments on an issue or of concern to the Planning Commission, except for the item that's on tonight's agenda. So if that's, so tonight's agenda is going to be a public hearing on file ZDO 292 related to the walk bike Clackamas plan. There will be an opportunity for public testimony as a part of that hearing, but that'll be announced later in the agenda. So if there's anyone who would like to comment on something other than the walk bike plan, you can raise your hand feature now. Darcy, anybody interested? No? Okay, so I guess we'll move on to the public hearing. So the public hearing is now open for consideration of ZDO 292, a legislative proposal to amend the Clackamas County Comprehensive Plan. Assisting us in the hearing today are several members of the county staff, senior planners Scott Holscher, long-range planning manager Karen Burlig, planning director Jennifer Hughes, and administrative specialist Darcy Renhard. The public hearing is being conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearing, which include members of the Planning Commission and county staff, have both audio and video capability. If a panelist is participating with audio but not video, the members of the audience will not see the panelist's name on their screen, but they will be able to hear them when they speak. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their mics muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the county's website as soon as possible. The Planning Commission is charged with making a recommendation on legislative amendment proposals to the Board of County Commissioners. The record for this hearing will be forwarded to the board, which will make the final decision on this matter. The board will conduct another hearing on this application on Tuesday, May 13th, 2025 at 11 a.m. That hearing will be de novo, meaning that the hearing will be started anew and additional testimony may be offered. Tonight's hearing will not go beyond 10 p.m. unless a majority of the planning commissioners in attendance vote to continue past that time. If not concluded, it will be continued to a date and time certain. The hearing may be continued for other reasons as well. If an announcement of an additional hearing date and time is made tonight, it will be the only notice given of that additional hearing. So here's how the hearing is going to be conducted. First, we're going to get a report from the planning and zoning staff. Then any other entries into the record of additional correspondence that's been received, any technical information from other government agencies. Then we will take testimony by representatives of recognized community planning organizations or hamlets, and then testimony by any other person. And then we'll close the public hearing, and then the Planning Commission will discuss and take action. With that, I'm turning it over to staff now, and they will present the staff report.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Peterson. I'm Scott Holscher, a senior planner for the county. I will give the staff report. I'm going to share screen now. So thank you. It's great to be here again tonight. We had the study session and the briefing on this project last month. So tonight I'd like to do an overview of the walk bike plan again, and then I'll talk about the adoption package, and certainly time for questions and any public testimony. So as Commissioner Peterson said, this package, ZDO 292, is for the adoption of the walk bike plan. And that is an amendment to the comprehensive plan. Essentially does three things. First is compliance with state law, specifically statewide planning goal 12, which is transportation. So as you probably aware, statewide planning goals, there's 19 of them. Goal 12 is transportation. For the transportation planning goal, there is a Oregon Administrative Rule, which is the Transportation Planning Rule, which is OAR 660. 660 contains the requirements for transportation planning. And specifically, there are requirements for pedestrian transportation planning and bicycle transportation under OAR 660. So this project is a project that looks to update both the pedestrian master plan and the bicycle master plan concurrently to result in a combined walk bike Clackamas plan. And this project will serve as the bicycle and pedestrian element of the TSP. And the TSP is a project that will look at all modes of transportation for the county and starting up later this year. So what is the walk bike Clackamas plan? Really, what are we talking about here with this project? So this was a 2.5-year project that is the first update to the pedestrian bicycle master plan since 1996. The county has done some targeted projects that looked at geographic areas in the county, such as the Villages of Mount Hood Pet Bike Plan. We also did a essentially a pet bike area plan around the Clackamas Town Center when the Max Green Line opened, looking at last mile connections to the Max Green Line. So we've done some targeted areas of the county, but we haven't done a full update to the pedestrian bicycle master plan since 1996. So this is really a roadmap for future pedestrian bicycle investments in the county. Where do we need new bike lanes, trails, sidewalks, and how should we prioritize those? Project also looks at, besides capital investments, also looks at supportive programs. So these are other things that the county could invest in to make walking and biking a viable form of transportation throughout the county, both in the urban area and rural area. And we worked hard to really center community engagement and working with the public from the start of the project all the way to the end. I'll talk about some of the specific engagement in a minute, but this was a project that we really centered public engagement, and we really wanted to build a walk bike plan centered on community engagement. So given the size of the county, we really have 5 separate walk bike plans. At the start of the project, we created 5 planning areas, each with a different set of priorities. So the needs around Mount Hood are different than, say, in Oak Grove. So each planning area has its own set of projects and corresponding project tables. The 5 areas, which are shown here, are the town center area in purple, And there's two maps in your packet for the town center. That was such a complex area that we needed to divide it up into east and west. So I take that back. There's actually 6 areas. Other areas you can see here, the McLaughlin area, east area, south area, Northwest County. Couple things that this project isn't, it's not a capital improvement plan. So there isn't funding provided or set aside for construction of any of these projects that are in the walk bike plan. And as I said, it's not a full TSP. That's coming later this year, but this project will help inform that full TSP update. So I mentioned that community engagement was an important part of this project. Really, the project outcomes, the projects, which we'll talk about in a minute, the programs, the policies, are really based on the public feedback that we received during the 2.5-year project. And the first thing we did at the start of the project, even before we had the consultant on board, even before we officially began the project, was early engagement at the Clackamas County Fair. We spent the full week at the fair, and we asked people, what is important to you when you think about walking and biking in Clackamas County? We conducted kind of a simple dot game at our table for the walk bike plan. And we asked people, what was important? Was it safety? Is it getting healthy? Is it exercise? Is it health? Is it tourism? Is it supporting the economy? And these 5 categories were defined on the large board, and over 300 people provided input. And this provided the foundation for the project, kind of the foundation that the project was built on, provided the foundation for the goals in the project, and really set the tone for the project. This slide shows the other things that were part of the public engagement process. Included things like a project website, we had a project flyer that was distributed electronically and at physical locations. We did social media blasts throughout the project, presentations to community groups and interested parties. We formed a project advisory committee, which included 18 members. This advisory committee met 4 times and provided feedback on deliverables along the way. They help us flesh out and define the project goals, the criteria for project prioritization, and the supportive programs really were critical throughout the project. So that's kind of a brief summary of some of the engagement we did, but the engagement was also centered around 4 milestones. And I'll briefly go through each of these milestones. We talked a little bit about these at the study session, but go over them quickly again since they were such an important part of the project. So the first milestone were so-called community conversations. And these were, the idea was to hold events in locations where people were already gathering. So bringing information to residents. Sometimes this can lead to, more meaningful dialogue and wider distribution of information. So we did a series of these so-called community conversations, went to Trolley Trail Fest, various farmers markets. We did a pop-up event at the Clackamas Town Center, various community conversations. And this milestone was designed to get the word out about the project and start the development of the Ped Bike Network, asking about gaps and deficiencies. So where are there gaps in the network? Where would you like to see new capital projects? We had a large map that we brought to the community conversations where people could draw on that, showing locations for needed bike lanes, sidewalks, etc. Milestone number 2 then took that a step further, and that was a virtual open house, which included an interactive map and corresponding survey. The interactive map was a platform where people could drop a pin or draw a line where they felt new improvements were needed. Through this process, we received 800 written comments and 270 submissions on the online mapping tool. So that was really helpful to, again, start developing the network that's the result that's in the plan document. Milestone number 3 was an open house at North Clackamas Park, a Movies in the Park event, and also additional staffing at the county fair. We set up a booth at the Clackamas County Fair that we staffed for the whole week. That was a combination of volunteers from our Ped Bike Advisory Committee as well as staff. And through that milestone, we had over 400 participants. Milestone number 4 was a final survey to kick out the draft plan and get feedback on the draft plan. And we asked people, do we have the right projects? Are there missing projects? We had an interactive map where people could see the draft plan and scroll through it for each of the 5 areas. So it was really 5 individual surveys. And that received 660 responses. Another big part of the kind of the coordination and the efforts was coordinating with our partners, our city partners, our partners from ODOT, Metro. We convened an agency partner workshop where we met with these agencies to talk about opportunities for collaboration. As we talked about at the study session, there are projects that cross jurisdictional boundaries. There are some ODOT projects. So it's really important to share information. Lake Oswego, what are you working on? Oregon City, what are you working on? So we held this agency partner workshop to really try to get on the same page and what are those opportunities for collaboration. Moving on to kind of the meat and potatoes of the project, what are the outcomes of the walk bike plan? Talked a little bit about projects. So this was really an important part of the project, was to identify projects where we can go out and seek grant funding. Having them in a plan really cues us up to seek grant funding to build sidewalks, to build bike lanes, etc. The programs, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, and then policies. So I kind of like to think of it as 3 Ps: projects, programs, and policies. On the program front, excuse me, on the project front, there are essentially 2 types of projects in the walk bike plan: linear projects, which include bike lanes, sidewalks, and multi-use trails, and plane projects, which include things like crosswalks, bike signals, and bike boxes. This slide shows in sum the total number of projects in the plan. So all told, there's 236 projects. You can see the breakdown for total projects by the different areas. And then we have sidewalk mileage, the bikeway mileage, and the trail mileage for each of the planning areas. So each area, there is a corresponding, there's a project map. This is an example of a project map. This is the one for the McLaughlin area, and there are maps for the 4 other planning areas. Associated project tables. The maps work hand in hand with the project tables. And I can pull up a table if we would like to review that later. I don't have one on the slideshow. But the tables provide more information on each of these projects. They provide a description, a distance, how long is the project for the linear projects. The tables have the planning area where the project is located. A lot of good information. We also created a key on the map that you find on a lot of maps where you can go to, C5 and then find where the project is on the map with that key on the table. Couple other notes about the map. The different colors represent project tiers. Part of this project was going through a prioritization process after we had the base map developed. In the prioritization process, set 3 categories of projects. Tier 1, high priority. So the projects that scored the most points through this prioritization process, they are shown in green. Tier 2, medium priority, are shown in, my notes said yellow, but that's more orange, in orange. And tier 3 is red, low priority. A couple other notes about this map. If the number is on the line, that corresponds to a linear project. The point projects have the numbers offset. And for each of the areas, we created a unique numbering system. So the M corresponds to McLaughlin area. If it's in the east area, it has an E101, E102 down the line. So it's easy to use them, easy to use the tables and find the information on the corresponding maps. So along with, in the project category are shared streets. This concept of, along with traditional bike lanes and sidewalks, a new type of facility stemming from this project are these so-called shared streets. And these are streets that we would lower speeds and install other things to hopefully make them streets where people biking, walking, recreating can share the space with low-speed motor vehicle traffic. So the idea is really to look at where these streets that will can connect up to bike lanes, to trails, and be part of the whole active transportation network, providing connections to parks, to schools, other neighborhood destinations. And it really came about because we heard through this process that speeding is a safety concern, that speeding is a problem. And is there a way to lower speeds on local roads? And the county now has the authority to do that. There was a statute a couple of years back that gives the county the authority to set speed limits. So the shared street program was a big part of the Walk Bike Plan project. We did some surveying around it in milestone number 2 with that wiki mapping exercise. We provided an overview of the shared streets, and we asked people, are they supportive of this? And we received over 90% public support of this program. Right now, the county doesn't have any shared streets, so it would be something that we would implement in the future. But to identify draft shared streets, we went through this 3-step screening process. Step 1 was to identify minimum criteria that the street needed to meet. So there's certain things that the street had to meet in order to be even considered for this shared street. First thing was a local street with 25-mile-an-hour posting. So we're not looking at collectors, arterials, we're not looking at busy streets. This is strictly to start off just the local street system. 2 other things that the streets needed to have: low ADT, less than 2,000 vehicles per day. So ADT is average daily traffic. So low volumes, low speeds, and no transit service. After that initial step 1 screening, we applied other factors to set prioritization. So the idea of this step was to identify the most needed segments. Most needed segments based on certain metrics, such as, does it align with the Safe Routes to School plan? Does it connect to a park? Does it connect to another destination? So we had a number of metrics that we looked at and tried to identify the most important segments. And step 3 in this process is the actual implementation. And this would occur, after the plan is adopted, and it would involve then identifying the specific improvements such as what type of signage to go with the 20-mile-an-hour signs. So there's different, unique signage you can put out there to identify them as shared streets, pavement markings, other things, mini traffic circles. There's a lot of things in the toolbox, but that would be, something that would be finalized after the plan is adopted. And once we finalize which would be the first streets to do the shared street concept. So moving on to programs, this is P number 2 is programs. So as I said, building bike lane, besides building bike lanes and sidewalks, there's a lot of other things that we can do to have a safe transportation system. I should note that there's not money set aside for these programs. These are potential programs that the county would have to go out and get funding for in order to do any of these programs. They came out of the public involvement process. We asked the community for ideas through all the surveying that we did, through the community conversations, and we worked with the advisory committee to develop a draft program list. Should note that there are some existing programs that the county is currently involved in, and those are shown in blue on this slide. The proposed new programs are shown in orange. And I won't go through all these. We talked about these quite a bit at the study session, but I'll just highlight a couple programs. The 2 that received the most public support were the school zone safety campaign under the campaign banner. Through our Safe Routes to School program and our action plans that we do with elementary and middle schools throughout the county, data and surveying through that process shows there's large volume of traffic around schools and a real concern about, safety during AM and PM drop-off. So a school zone safety campaign would focus on streets adjacent to schools, and it could involve things like printed and electronic materials, social media posts, yard signs, kind of an informational campaign surrounding just the importance of safe driving through school zones. This could be a collaboration with the Clackamas County Sheriff and a school district in the county. The other one is actually the one right below that, no parking in the bike lane. So in Clackamas County, and probably in other jurisdictions too, a lot of bike lanes appear as shoulders. And cars often unknowingly park in the bike lane, which creates a safety issue, not only for bicyclists, but for vehicles when a bike has to swerve into the travel lane. So this would be a campaign involving education materials to simply inform people of the issue. And similar to the Safe Routes campaign, it could involve printed materials, really just a campaign to make people aware of the issue. Moving on to so those are kind of the main outcomes of the project. So moving on to talk a little bit about funding opportunities. We had some discussion at the study session about, there's a lot of projects. There's 236 projects, and there's a lot of things in the walk bike plan. As I mentioned, there's not funding tied to this project. So how would we do some of this stuff? A lot of it would be grants. There's federal, state, and local grant opportunities specifically for active transportation projects. Safe Routes to School grants, this provides an ongoing funding for capital infrastructure grants around schools. It's a biannual grant program that's administered by ODOT, and it's state money that is an ongoing pot of money every other year. And it's a program that we've gotten funding for sidewalks and bike lanes on Webster Road. And this year, recently, we received funding for crosswalks in the Oak Grove area. So both linear projects and point projects have been funded through that Safe Routes to School pot of money. And there's, the grants come and go. Sometimes there's a lot of grant opportunities. Things are a little bit maybe unknown at this point, but certainly this project would get us in the position to seek grant funding in the future. Urban renewal, some examples of projects that we've done in urban renewal districts are, for example, the pedestrian bicycle improvements along Sunnyside Road in the Clackamas Town Center area. The improvements that just recently got constructed on Linwood Avenue in the Milwaukee area are two examples of urban renewal money through what we call tax increment financing. This uses future tax revenues to pay for investments that will bring in additional tax revenue. And the North Clackamas revitalization area is the one urban renewal district that's still collecting money in the county. So urban renewal monies, the community road fund, vehicle registration fee. An example of that is the Welch's Road path up on the villages of Mount Hood. That's using community road fund money. And then the last one I'd mention is the fee in lieu. I think some of you might be familiar with FELO, which applies to new development. And in some situations, it allows a developer to pay into a sidewalk improvement fund, which those monies can then be used to build pedestrian facilities. So a variety of different, things in the toolbox for funding these projects that are in the plan. So getting back to what this ZDO 292, what the proposal is. So again, the item before you tonight involves three things. One is to adopt the walk bike plan into the county comprehensive plan. This would entail adopting that by reference in Appendix A of the comprehensive plan. Currently, the pedestrian master plan and the bicycle master plan are in Appendix A. So this would replace those two documents in Appendix A. And that Appendix A essentially makes it it's the part of the comp plan. So it's like opening up the comp plan, and Appendix A is part of the comp plan. The appendices would go in Appendix B. And there are a number of policies that are part of the amendment package that are being updated in Chapter 5, the Transportation System Plan. So the updated active transportation policies include 7 new policies, 6 amended policies, and other amendments in Chapter 5. So this is the text of Chapter 5. In the other amendments include adding the walk bike goals into the intro section of the active transportation portion of Chapter 5. There are also a couple definition updates towards the end of Chapter 5 and a couple other scattered conforming amendments in Chapter 5. I won't go through all these policies. We can certainly talk about them and answer any questions about them. The idea was to hit on the policies, to bring up the active transportation section of Chapter 5 in conformance with the walk bike plan. So they jive. Things have changed since the policies were last updated, so we needed to update those to make them in compliance with everything. And moving right along, in your packet, besides the walk bike plan, is a staff report that includes findings related to relevant sections of the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan, all of the statewide planning goals, etc. Many of the statewide planning goals do not apply for an application like this. The most relevant one, of course, as we talked about at the beginning, is Goal 12, transportation. But the staff report includes findings for all of the relevant approval criteria. And based on those findings that are in the staff report, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of County Commissioners adoption of ZDO 292. That the recommendation is that the proposed comprehensive plan text amendments in Chapter 5 be updated, that the Walk by Clackamas plan be included in Appendix A, and that the appendices of the Walk Bike plan be added to Appendix B. And that is the staff report, and I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Commissioner Peterson.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So are there any questions of staff from any of the commissioners? No?
I have a question.
Oh, Michael, okay. Murph, you're
Scott,
next.
when you started out with this, you said there were some state requirements. What are the state requirements that we have?
Well, the state requirements are, there are many. It is in Oregon Administrative Rule 660. And the state has a, in OAR 660, there is a section on pedestrian transportation planning and a section on bicycle transportation planning. And as in our statewide planning system, cities and counties are required to comply with the statewide planning goals.
So
And
what you're saying is we have to have a plan or we have to do something.
well, we have to have a plan. So the county needs to have a pedestrian master plan and a bicycle master plan. And so this is updating the current plans that were first adopted in 1996.
And the plan has to have certain requirements in it.
There's certain things, and that's what the transportation planning rule does. That lists the things that need to be in a pedestrian and bicycle master plan. And this project the intent was to update those plans so they comply with the transportation planning rule.
And from what I read in the report, what exactly are we missing here in Clackamas County to meet that requirement with the state?
Well, I guess I'm having a hard time following you. I guess I'm not answering the question right.
I just want to know what it is the state is requiring us to do and what are we not doing. I see we got a plan here to upgrade a lot of stuff, but what
I see Karen has
is
her
the
hand up. Maybe
state's
she-
requirement for us to do short end?
Yeah, Karen, I think you might want to jump in, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I guess I just wanted to point to the staff report on page 9, which outlines the specifics of the state requirements around both pedestrian planning. So we have requirements to do pedestrian planning, to do the inventory. It talks about the pedestrian system requirements, what it looks like, and what type of projects need to be included. It also has specifics. And so on page 10 of your packet, there are specifics about the bicycle planning requirements that the state has. And it has requirements about planning. It has requirements about inventory. It has the system requirements, what our system needs to look like, as well as a description of the projects. And so with all of that in Scott's staff report, he's saying that the work that we did as a part of, let's see, I feel like I lost Michael. But the work that we did as a part of the Walk Bike plan complies with the state requirements. And I think that's what his question was.
Yeah, it looks like he did fall off the call, but I believe that either that was his question or possibly he was interested in knowing if we're required to build any of it. I wasn't sure if that was part of it, but
Yeah,
he comes back on, we can get that clarified.
yeah. Okay, Murph. By the way, I've been cutting out a little bit too, so we'll see how I do here. Murph?
You're doing fine.
Okay,
Awesome job, Scott. And Karen, awesome job on this. I mean, this is quite the task. I really applaud you for the work you've done on it. Something that really throws up a flag is page 21 of your report. And about halfway down through, the percentage of adults engaging in physical activity in the county is decreasing. Just below that, people in the county have lower rates of walking and biking to work than compared to the state of Oregon. I find that as a real health flag. This is something that not only the Department of Transportation should be involved, this is something the state health should be involved in. If we're losing that type of exercise just due to traffic on our highways, we are really in trouble. I mean, this is something that needs to be, I think, really brought forward. When you go into the stress in traffic or stress on a bike in traffic, I forget how you worded it exactly. Same with pedestrian. I can really relate to that because a lot of these highways around in rural areas don't have shoulders. So you minimize how much time you're out on the road. It has to be a nice weather. I mean, you're in fluorescent clothing, you're trying to be visible, but still it's dangerous. So this is well overdue, having something like this, and I applaud you for bringing new ideas. Safe streets, a question about that would be, this is almost like converting these safe streets to open space managed property. Is it a 24-hour a day, 7 days a week? Does it have this title to it? And if so, does it raise the liability to drivers that are within this area? I know I fired a lot at you. I'll stop.
Yeah, could you repeat the first part of the question? I'm sorry, I
Well, the
missed
first
it.
part was the percentage of adults engaging in, you want me to go all the way back to the beginning?
Oh, no, just your final at the very end.
Oh, okay,
You
the
had a
final would
question
be-
about the safe streets.
Safe streets. Is there an actual conversion of the zoning of that street?
Hmm.
Is it going to
No,
space managed type?
the zoning would not change. It would be simply the speed limit and signage. And that's what we're starting with those shared streets. We're gonna see how that goes. Other jurisdictions have gone beyond that with shared streets. There's a lot of things that are in the toolbox for this type of facility. So things like we're not there yet for these. These would be things like traffic diverter, speed bumps, mini traffic circles to calm to slow traffic. So things like that would go along with the lowered speeds. But our program is, we don't have any of these right now, so it's starting slow. It really stems from, what we heard from the public that speeding is an issue and can you lower it, through neighborhoods and on local streets.
Will there be opportunity for streets to temporarily gain that status for events like during the summer of some, if they had a weekend to convert it to a safe street and maybe even shut off traffic to it?
That's a great idea. It's an interesting idea. I think that would fall under our program category. Under the programs, we had the so-called open streets events where maybe a portion is closed for a specific time. And so that would be, under the program category, which is in the plan. And, if there's support for that, that's something that the county could look up, setting up some sort of process or setting up some sort of, permit system or something to allow that.
I see. Great. Well, thank you. I'll let other commissioners take a shot at you. Thank you, Scott.
I think maybe we lost Tom. How about if we go with Commissioner Pack with your question?
Well, I was just gonna ask if we wanted to go back to Commissioner Wilson when he dropped off. You
Got it.
had a comment, Jennifer.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, Commissioner Wilson, if you, Karen pointed out some of the things that state law requires and that this plan will do as far as the components that we have to have in the plan. But I wasn't sure if you were also asking, I think you said something about do we have to have a plan, but is there something we have to do? Or were you wanting to know like if we're required to develop some of the things in the plan? Was that part of your question? Like, are we required to build these projects, or were you just asking about the plan itself?
I'm sorry I dropped off, but yes, I want to know what we are required to do in order to conform with what the state wants us to do.
Okay. So I don't know, Karen or Scott, if you want to tackle that, like, are we actually required? I mean, obviously, we want to build some of it. The county would like to build some of it, but is that an obligation?
So I'll answer this. This is allowing us to be in compliance with certain sections of the transportation planning rule, specifically the section around pedestrian planning and bicycle planning. So we will be in compliance with that. Now, with respect to when we do our full update of our transportation system plan, there are other portions of the transportation planning rule that require us to look at our funding projections and match it with the projects we expect to be able to fund. And so it's at that time that we will be in compliance with those portions of the transportation planning rule. So in summary, we are going to be in compliance with the pedestrian and bicycle portions of the transportation planning rule.
So it's being in compliance with the plan, but not actually having to spend any money.
Right, we don't have to do the portion of the transportation planning rule that requires us to do a funding forecast and then match and identify those projects that we anticipate building within that funding forecast. Because what they're requiring us to do now with regards to our funding forecast is we need to take projects from all modes and look at them together and not look at them separately when we do our funding forecast and create our capital improvement plan lists.
Okay, the reason I'm asking all this is I've been seeing a lot of information being passed around about ODOT running out of money, and this looks like it's going to cost us some extra money, and we got holes in the road all over the place, and they're not getting fixed. And this looks like it's not addressing that particular problem. That's just my take on it.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that I think that is why they want us to do a funding forecast and match the projects where we can look at all projects together and not just kind of one mode at a time. So I was kind of talking with Jennifer earlier about bringing forward to the Planning Commission in the next couple of months, kind of the project we will be working on. That is an overall update of our transportation system plan, where we will get to that piece where we will talk about funding and we will talk about how we create our capital improvement program for the next 20 years.
Have we had any input from the Traffic Safety Commission?
So that particular, so for the overall transportation system plan project, that's just getting started. But maybe I'll pass it over to Scott if we're asking about whether or not the Transportation Safety Commission provided input into this walk bike plan.
Yeah, they were briefed. I went to a TSC meeting. It was probably a year and a half ago, but it provided an overview of the project. And that was one of the meetings that we had as part of the project. It was just informational for them, so they were aware of it and could participate. They've been noticed of the public hearings. But yeah, we did brief them on the project. Like I said, it was probably a year and a half ago.
Okay, I'm sorry I'm taking up so much time.
I think, Michael, if I'm, what I look at this is just as a,
Just keep losing Tom tonight. How about if, let's move forward with Carrie. Let's move forward with your question.
Okay, I got one question and one just a clarification.
yeah, I'm sorry, I keep cutting out.
Yeah. Did you want to finish your thought, Tom? You cut out again. The shared concept street or shared street concept, I thought, it almost feels like that's a no-brainer just because it doesn't it doesn't require us to build new roads. It feels like a very low-hanging fruit that would add a lot of value pretty quickly. What my question on that was, is there an opportunity to extend that with the city? And I know you mentioned that, you're working with I think you mentioned that you're working with cities to identify which streets would be identified as a shared street. I'm just wondering if there is a way to extend it so that there is contiguous, areas where you can use as a shared street with the bikes and pedestrian and have as much connectivity as possible in those streets rather than just having these little segments here and there.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is something that's very important is the, continuation of a facility across, boundaries. If you're biking, you don't care if you're in, Happy Valley or an incorporated county. So
Right.
as we go towards the implementation of that, that's a great comment because that's something that we'll need to put on the list when we go to implement to look at that coordination. This is an urban treatment, so coordinating with, Happy Valley, Milwaukee, Gladstone, a lot of the shared street. The draft plan showed a lot of them in the Oak Grove area. So, connecting north to Milwaukee and south to Gladstone. Definitely when we get into the implementation and through that agency partner workshop that I mentioned, they're aware of the program. We've also briefed them at the CTAC, the Transportation Coordinating Committee with Clackamas County. So we're also meeting with C4. So I'll make sure to kind of emphasize that and look towards, their programs. I know Oregon City has done some shared streets in Oregon City. Milwaukee is working on their TSP right now, so it's possible something regarding shared streets will come out of their process. So great point.
All right, and then one clarification. I appreciate you putting together a list of potential funding opportunities because I think that was one of the areas that we talked about. But I just wanted to get a clarification under the urban renewal. Don't you already have to have these projects identified in the urban renewal as the urban renewal district is being established, or are those already established urban renewal districts? Can you just add projects onto them?
Well, they do. I might look to Karen on that one. She might know more about that process than I do.
So I think that's a great question. I think the first thing I'd say is, as a part of this planning process, we took projects from different sources, already existing plans, and then brought them in. So
Okay.
if there were pedestrian and bicycle projects in the urban renewal plans, they came into this process. So
Okay,
that's
okay.
one way that we were able to make sure that those things were covered, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and so the corollary to that is as new urban renewal district is established, we want to make sure that these projects get onto that list. Because I don't think you can just add projects to it. I think you actually have to have them identified as the district is being established.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a process there.
Yeah.
To
Okay.
add in new projects. Yes.
Thank you. And I echo Commissioner Murph's comment as I indicated during the work session. I think you guys have done a tremendous amount of work in such a huge landmass. I just, it boggles my mind how to create a kind of a comprehensible and readable document in such a huge source of data. So I appreciate your work and thank you for a great work.
Okay, can you hear me now? Going? Okay. I switched to my iPad. Hopefully I'll have better success. Any other questions of staff from the Emmy? No? No, you're nodding your head.
Jennifer has one.
Commissioner Satter has her hand up.
Oh, she's not showing up on my screen for some reason. I'm sorry. Commissioner Satter?
That's okay. I had people coming home, so I just from work, so I just turned off my camera so they're not walking around. So first, I wanted to comment on the safe streets about closing streets. I know in Molalla we have a process with our permitting process, so that would probably be done in a incorporated area within the city or that lowest level jurisdiction. And then I guess in unincorporated Clackamas County, that would be something that the county would need to organize. And then also on the urban renewal funds, there is a process to add projects to your urban renewal. You have to go to the other taxing districts within your boundaries for your urban renewal district and get a majority to approve the use of funds, I think. And then honestly, any questions I had were answered in the report. Is really comprehensive. And I do see like some of these streets, when I look through the list of the different projects, some of them are going to improve or reduce accidents for vehicles too, I believe. Some of these roads that don't have a lot of development on them. Like when I look at Bernard's, that's a road that gets a lot of car accidents, but having the lanes and having some development there would really improve the traffic there as well. I mean, not traffic, there isn't really traffic, but could potentially reduce the number of accidents total. But that's all I had to say.
Okay, great. Okay, anyone else have any more questions?
I have a couple.
Or are we
of
done with the
comments.
questions for now? What? Okay.
On page 6, or the screen 6 that was put up there by Scott, he had people that responded to his survey and the survey across it. Was there a breakdown on how many of those were urban and rural? Because it looks like most of these projects are centered around the urban area, and maybe that was more of an interest to the urban community respondents than they were for the rural. And also on number 9, number 9, he had something great.
Yeah, we're waiting for Michael to, I think it froze up. I didn't catch the
Yeah.
second part. On the first part, it depends on the survey platform that we use. We typically do have a means to, at the end, we usually ask for demographic information, such as your location. So we like to track and find out where people that are taking the survey, where they live. So I would have to go back and look at that data, but yes, that's typically what we get through the survey. There's usually demographic questions at the end of the survey that ask some basic demographic in and location. So we could look at that. And
Because the
Michael, I
reason I'm
missed
asking
your,
that is, the reason I'm
Yeah.
asking that is some of this money is gonna cost, I mean, some of these projects are gonna cost some money. And, you know, we're looking at, increasing a tax on renewing your vehicle and a lot of stuff like that. You know, some of the folks in the rural area that are not going to be back road going to be available for them, but they're going to have to pay for it.
I didn't catch all
So,
that.
you know, go ahead.
I
You know,
thi-
what
I think-
constitutes a trail?
Yeah. I think the reality here, this is just a list. Doesn't mean any of this is going to happen. It's just a plan. And then in the next process, there will be the debates that will happen that will then determine which projects get funded, which ones have more merit. These will just be in the mix, so to speak. So at this point, I'm not too concerned about these projects taking away funding from other projects, because at this point, it's just a list for the transportation group to evaluate when it comes time to do the transportation plan. So and at that time, then we can have the discussions about, well, does this bike path worth it in light of the fact that we have county roads that need potholes and we only have so much money to go around. So I understand where your concerns are coming from Michael, but I don't think it really has any bearing on this particular phase of the plan. It's more for the future, when your comments will probably be more of interest and more relevant as well. At least that's my take on it.
Okay, I agree
That
with you,
helpful?
Tom. And then over on number 10, on number 10 of his screen, we had all those lists of projects. And obviously they prioritized them some way or another, but there was no indication of a potential cost for each one of those. And I agree with you. When it comes time to actually implementing it, then we're going to talk about how much does each one of them cost. But, you know, given some ideas to, you know, what's the magnitude of what we're looking at here?
That comment came up at the planning session also, that it was unfortunate that, I'm trying to remember the response that we got, why we didn't do the cost at that time. I think you had to limit it in your budget in order to do that, if I recall. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. So I would say a couple things on that. So we started down that path. What we had intended to do were cost estimates for the tier 1 projects. Remember, there's 3 categories of
Right.
projects. The high priority tier 1s. We had intended to get project estimates for those tier 1s, and we started on that path, and we did get draft, and we set up a cost methodology, and we got an initial numbers from the consultant for the tier 1, the high priority projects, and traffic, the engineers, myself, the project team sat down, and the numbers just seemed wildly, they didn't match up with what we had anticipated. And so we had some initial numbers, which I could share with you, but then for budget reasons, we weren't able to correct the cost estimates and get them in line with what was at the time a reasonable estimate for the project. So it wasn't a useful part of the project, and we weren't able to use those cost estimates. But we had intended to have them for the tier 1 high priority projects.
And a
So-
tier
so-
1 project was safety related?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
A tier 1 project was safety related?
Well, they would be safety projects. Yeah, the tier 1s include a variety of different type of projects.
And I think the tier 1s will be the ones that will get weighed up against the other projects in transportation. And then in some cases, some of if I recall, the approach was to try to, if it's a tier 1 project and there happens to be another transportation project in that same area, that would maybe be incorporated into that project as opposed to it being a standalone. So there's a whole lot of variables of how this could play out, if I recall. Is that true?
Well, that was part of the problem with doing cost estimates because there were so many variables, and there was too many variables. It didn't really work out, and we frankly, to be honest, it was a pretty small budget project, and it's been noted, to do something countywide of this scale,
Huge.
both modes for that hadn't been done in 30 years.
Yeah.
It was a pretty small budget project, plus all the public involvement that we did. So we frankly just didn't have enough money at the end of the project to do the cost estimates.
Right.
If I-
Okay.
Commissioner Peterson, if I could just
Yeah.
interrupt for a second. I see we got people with a kind of another round of
Yeah.
questions. We do have a couple people in the audience who may be here to testify, and I just think we might want to verify that and consider, because they've been here over an hour, and then we could come back maybe to this discussion. Just a thought.
I'm fine with that. So moving on, I think Murph, you're next.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a question about page 92. I could talk about this all day, but some of the key facility types and design elements: uphill, downhill markings, 2-stage left turn markings, vertical separation for bike lanes, and shy zones. Never heard of it.
Well, great questions. So shy zones are those basically that shy zone is a distance away from like an object or a wall, or you need a shy zone away from a physical barrier. So say there's like a guardrail or something, you need a foot or 2, 3 feet or what have you of shy distance away from that. So that looks at well, I should just read it because I would probably come off more clear by just reading it. The shy zone distance is a distance from which a bicyclist feel comfortable riding next to a physical, often vertical element. So it could be like, parked cars. There's shy distance of, 3 feet, 4 feet from a parked car, for example. And then the other one, let's see, let me go back to that list. Well, vertical separation for bike lanes, that refers to similar to what we did at the Clackamas Town Center, where you have a raised bike and ped facility. So it's a vertical, you're off of the roadway. So you can have horizontal separation, like a, painted buffer, which gives you more distance away from traffic. Or you can have the vertical separation, which we don't have many examples like that, but we constructed the one on Sunnyside Road between basically I-205 and 82nd, where that's vertically separated from the roadway.
Yeah, I've been on it, and know exactly what you're talking about. I do see a little problem with bikes and pedestrians in that type of situation when you have a sidewalk right next to it. Pedestrians have to be paying attention to what's coming up behind them in that particular case. Yeah, thank you, Scott. I'll let Jennifer.
Murph, you brought up a good idea about definition. What is a micro mobility program? You listed that on number 13 of your slide. A micro mobility program. What exactly is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we talked about defining that. And I'm going to my copy and see if we added a definition of micromobility, because we talked about that, Karen. Didn't we? I'm just looking at to see if we added that.
You know,
But
if you don't have an answer right off, can maybe send that offline sideline. Jennifer's been patiently waiting for to ask her question, so let's move on to Jennifer. You're on mute. There we go.
Oh, I wasn't sure which Jennifer.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry. I should have
I-
said Commissioner Satter. My apologies.
That's okay. There's so
Yeah.
many Jennifers. I'm used to it.
Yes. I happen to be a first name person. I have trouble using last names, so bear with me.
It's okay. I think the point, a lot of the best point about this is once it's passed, it can get codified. And then when the developers develop or other jurisdictions develop, then the county has all this in place in code, and those developments are required to make these investments, and then it saves the county taxpayers money. Because then we don't have
Good
to
point.
pay for it.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, any more questions before we move on to the public testimony phase? There'll be an opportunity to discuss this some more after we're done with the public testimony. So if you still have some burning questions out there, we can bring them up again then, I guess. Seeing no hands raised, I guess we'll move on to the public testimony phase. If you do want to testify, you need to do the raise hand in Zoom. Hopefully you have a raise hand button on your device. If you're calling in via telephone, you use *9 to activate the raise hand feature. When the moderator switches you over to provide testimony, your screen will look different for a moment. Primarily, you will see all participants' cameras, not just the one who's speaking. The moderator will call upon you when it's time for you to provide testimony for the record. And then please begin by stating your name and where you are from or whom you are representing. Once you've provided your testimony, your mic will be muted and your screen will be returned to normal. So first we're going to start with, are there any representatives of community planning organizations or hamlets here to speak? No? Mercy, no? Okay.
I have, I'm sorry, Commissioner Peterson. I have Jim Schroeder with a hand up.
Jim would be representing as an individual. I know Jim. He's my Viking buddy. I know him well.
Okay.
He wouldn't be a hamlet or he'll be first up when we get to the individual citizens.
So Joseph Edge is in the audience, but I don't know if he's here to speak on behalf of the Oak Grove CPO or not. Doesn't have his hand up, so I'm gonna guess no, because he's a pro at this and knows how this works. So we're gonna assume he's not here in that capacity.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess now we'll move on to the general public testimony.
Jim Schroeder's hand is up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I don't know why I can't see that. You can.
Let's go ahead and bring him in, Darcy, because even if he's not with a CPO, he'll be next anyway.
Jim, are you there? You're on mute.
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can.
Commissioner Peterson, thank you for the opportunity. The rest of the commissioners, staff, Scott and Karen, you guys have done an unbelievable job in pulling this plan together. I have been I'm sorry. So Jim Schroeder, resident of Happy Valley off of 142nd and Sunnyside Road. I am not part of the CPO. I'm not sure if there's any hamlet or that I know of any, but I'm not a member of one. Thank you for the opportunity. I've been a lifelong resident of Clackamas County. I've cycled close to probably 60 years of my life across the county. I've been very comfortable riding on the county roads. I'm not anymore. I've now got grandchildren. I'm not comfortable taking them on the county roads around where I live, just because of one, connectivity. And for me, there's kind of three pillars. Connectivity leads to safety. Safety leads to being healthy. And so I applaud, I think, Commissioner Murphy, you bringing up the health part of the plan that Scott and his team put together. And Commissioner Wilson, I respect your opinion. We now drive our cars with all of our bikes to find a safe area to recreate in. And so those trips on our cars wear out the roads. And so any kind of connectivity we can accomplish within the county in any period of time is greatly appreciated, because it takes cars off the roads and continues to lead this connectivity, safety, and healthy kind of tissue that I really applaud you folks bringing together in this plan. I completely support what you've done and look forward to kind of the funding aspects of it. That ends my testimony. Thank you, Commissioner Peterson.
Okay. You're welcome. Anybody else? Okay.
I have Joseph Edge.
Oh, he decided he wanted to speak after all. Okay. Mr. Edge, you're on mute right now. There we go.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. And I mean, yeah, I'm not speaking on behalf of a CPO today, but I am. My name is Joseph Edge, and I represented the Pedestrian Bikeway Advisory Committee on the Watch Bike Clackamas Advisory Committee. I live in Oak Grove, and I've served on the PBAC since 2017. And then first off, although it's been said, I'd really like to thank the project team, including in particular Scott Holster, who did a fantastic job shepherding this project over its 2.5-year process. It's a very, very long-term project, and I really appreciate everything that he really put into it. And then just a quick FYI, micro mobility programs are essentially just bike sharing or short-term bike rentals, like hourly bike rentals. So that's for that question. That's the answer to that. So anyway, in short, we support the plan and believe the draft plan should be adopted. The plan modernizes the county's approach to planning and building transportation infrastructure to safely accommodate the traveling public. The identified projects are appropriate and necessary to build out the planned transportation system. And it's really doing this without significantly departing from, existing adopted plans. If you recall, a lot of the projects were already in previous TSPs and the active transportation plan. And then again, I just want to call out, although it's been done, that there is a chapter describing the extensive public outreach and engagement that occurred for the duration of the project. The draft plan before you really represents a collaborative effort by the project team and volunteers on the advisory committees and, really the general public. And so in addition to PBAC, I'm really active with the Oak Grove CPO. And their meetings have been a venue for several presentations about this project, as well as just Scott mentioned, he was at the Trolley Trail Festival as well, and several other places, across the county. The project team really did an excellent job with public engagement for the duration for the development of the plan. The project goals, performance measures, and the associated comprehensive plan amendments are really common sense and consistent with the accepted best practices for transportation planning and engineering nationwide at this point. The policies will not burden the county with mandatory design elements that will inflate the cost of projects. These updated policies provide the county with flexibility in identifying a range of context-sensitive solutions to improve safety and accommodate travelers throughout the county's diverse geographic settings. The proposed projects would serve to substantially build out the planned transportation system. The project list identifies a significant number of areas where improvements are needed, and it does prioritize projects into the 3 tiers based on a number of factors in an effort to be objective. Really, honestly, project prioritization is a difficult exercise in a county of over 420,000 residents, and it's likely that no version of any proposal will ever be viewed as perfect by everybody. And so given the extensive public outreach and participation to get us to this point, we really encourage you to, to adopt the draft plan as it's proposed. And then I really want to call out as well, it's been brought up a few times, but it's particularly popular in the Oak Grove CPO meetings as a subject of conversation, is the shared streets network that is proposed in the urban area. This network would leverage neighborhood streets with lower traffic volumes to provide low stress connections for people walking, rolling, and biking. Lower stress options are attractive for travelers in urban areas who are interested in riding but lack the confidence to feel safe riding on busy streets. And due to the lower traffic volumes, shared streets do not require the same kinds of typically expensive improvements that are needed on busier streets to help less confident riders feel safe during their journey. And so it's important to recognize that the plan fulfills an obligation under state law for local governments to maintain facilities plans that identify projects that are needed to accommodate expected growth during a 20-year planning horizon. The purpose of this plan is to identify the projects, not to identify sources of funding. There are other documents such as capital improvement plan that do identify expected funding sources for specific projects. To even be eligible to be placed on a capital improvement plan, a project must first be identified on a facilities plan. So again, this plan is not focused on funding sources, and given its place in the regulatory hierarchy of planning documents, it is not expected that this plan would identify funding sources.
Yeah.
So we support the draft plan as presented and respectfully request that you recommend approval and adoption of the draft plan and amendments to the comprehensive plan to the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you for your time and consideration of our comments. I am happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Okay, very well stated. Thank you for your comments. Okay, are there any other hands from the public that want to testify? Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public testimony portion of the hearing. And now we can move on to additional discussion amongst the commissioners, or if there are any additional questions back to staff based on the testimony. So Murph, it looks like you want to say something. Your hand's up. Or on mute. There you go.
Thank you, Tom. During the workshop, I brought up the crosswalk in rhododendron. I was wondering if there's any chance of that could be slipped into this plan. And that crosswalk in rhododendron is, at the end of a bike trail. It has to cross Highway 26 somehow, and it's one of the most dangerous places, I should say, in the mountain area right now. So I have to throw that at you, Scott.
Well, I think it's a great toss. I think it's great to put out there. I think it's a great comment. So I would say a couple of things. One is I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that Mount Hood Pet Bike implementation plan. So that project looked at rhododendron, it looked at Welch's, Zigzag, all the villages. And that project you're talking about is in that plan. As far as adding it to this plan, I think it would be appropriate. This is a draft plan, and I think it's a suggested project that is important for a number of reasons. I think, I guess I would look to maybe Jennifer or Karen to see if that is something that would be entertained as far as adding it. And if so, like, how would that be done? If it's a suggestion by the planning commission to the board to add that project, I guess I would look to Jennifer or Karen on that.
I mean, the planning commission can recommend that to the board. That's what their, you know, their entire thing tonight would be a recommendation. They can certainly do that. I guess my question would be, I don't know how that fits in with this sort of process you've gone through. I mean, I just have a little concern about, there's been this process that you've gone through, which has been outreach and all of these sort of steps and coming up with this list, and to just sort of add something, I think we would need to understand how that fits with, you know, does it fit into the scheme of everything else you've done? Does it make sense? Or are we just sort of putting something in there that maybe doesn't? That would be my only question.
May I add a little that that the Rhododendron CPO was on this. They had a subcommittee called Rhody Rising. And this was one of their projects, was to put a safe crossing in the middle of their town so you could get from one end of town to the other without getting run over. You know, you're right at the base of the mountain. This is where trucks start to get a run. Putting something in, you know, you couldn't put a stoplight in, you're asking for trouble. So it, you know, was kind of decided that there'd be an island put in the middle of the road. So at least you had a place of refuge to run to and get to the center of it and hide until you could get across the highway. But pandemic pretty much slowed this down when a CPO meeting started disappearing. And so we didn't hear much about it. So I have brought this up with the chair of the Rhody CPO. They'd love to see it, but it's, we need support from the CPO to put it on it, I could probably bring it up.
Yeah, we did, as I mentioned in the work session, we did that redevelopment concept plan for those two parcels, the Snowline Motel and the gas station parcel. And it was, you know, looked at during that project, and then a subsequent project involved ODOT looking at the Highway 26 cross-section and looking at ped bike improvements on each side of the highway and how that would look. And so it's, you know, in at least two other documents. And yeah, I guess as far as adding it now, I'm not. I guess it could be suggested.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why, how that may not have been suggested when you were doing the original vetting, that being a project that had been brought up some time back. Somehow it slipped through the cracks maybe, or does it not fit the criteria?
I don't have a good answer for that. You know, given how big the county was and how complex this was,
yeah,
it's certainly possible. It just, it's possible we missed it, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, that's certainly possible. I don't have a good answer for why it wasn't included.
Okay. Well, I guess that's something, Murph, if you want to propose that when it comes to an amendment, that you're welcome to do that, I guess.
Great.
Any other questions or comments from the other commissioners? Some of us have had a chance to ask a lot of our questions at the work study session, so that's why some of us are quiet now, probably. No? Well, I want to make a comment since no one else will. Having been a former commuter, a bike commuter, that Jim and I spent many days commuting into Portland back when we were both employed. So I'm thrilled about this program as well. I'm not a cyclist like I used to be, but I'm a big walker, so I'm always out walking, and so it's important as well that this addresses the safety for all the people walking, and I see lots of people when I walking their dogs, taking their kids to school, all kinds of things. So I really applaud this effort to take this more holistic approach to how people get to and from venues. So excellent piece of work. Long process, and I really applaud you for the end product. It'll be interesting to see how much, given the funding challenges we have going forward, we'll actually be able to do. But at least we have a good plan to work from. So thank you for that. So no other questions or comments. So
I have a comment, Tom.
yeah. Did you cut out again?
I've talked to my neighbor, very upset with ODOT and not being able to repair the roads. This is a very interesting plan, and it looks like it's going to add some costs to our transportation. They're upset though about not having roads that are maintained. We have a requirement that we have good roads for our economic growth. Recreation is important, but economic growth feeds. I'm upset that we're putting together a plan here, and maybe it'll get implemented when we have enough money for it. But right now, we can't even repair our roads. So that's what upsets me the most right now. I like the plan. I like recreation. I like the thought about bicycle, good roads to grow our economy so that we can afford that recreation. That's just my comments.
Yeah, and I think most people are in agreement. There's a serious problem with the condition of our roads as well. So it's going to be an interesting challenge for us going forward, how we take care of the basic infrastructure, but at the same time, if there's opportunities, make some additional enhancements if they're, if we can afford them. But I understand your frustration, but this isn't committing the county to spend any money at this point. There's another conversation to have when that comes, and I think your points would be very well taken at that time. So I'd appreciate your comments. And you just cut out again, so I don't know if you heard me. Well, hopefully Michael will be back. Does anyone want to make a motion, or we want to wait till he's back online before we entertain a motion? No one wants.
I'll make a motion, Tom.
Okay.
Make a motion to accept this plan for recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners as written, with a condition to seriously take a look at the crosswalk in rhododendron.
Is there anyone that would like to second that motion? Michael, did you hear the motion?
I'm sorry, I got dropped off.
Yeah. So Commissioner Murphy made a motion to approve the plan recommended by staff, with the caveat of also including the project in rhododendron, the crosswalk in rhododendron.
I'll vote in favor of that.
And I,
as an additional thing.
and I'll second the motion, Tom, or Chair Peterson.
You'll second the motion. Okay. Okay, so I'll see if I can read the motion again. It's to approve the ZDO 292 to the Board of County Commissioners as recommended by staff, with the additional request to consider adding the intersection and a pedestrian crossing in rhododendron. Is that correct? Okay, did I have that correct? Okay. Okay, so all those in favor?
Tom,
We-
we need to do a
we need
roll
to
call vote.
Do an
Yeah, we'll
oral
do-
vote.
Yes. I just see that. I was about to get there, sorry. So Darcy, can you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Lopes,
Yes.
Commissioner Pack,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yeah.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Founds,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Satter,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
You're on
Yes.
mute.
Yes.
and Commissioner Peterson.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay, the motion passes. So the public hearing is now
Amendment passed.
closed. Huh?
The amendment passed.
Motion and the amendment passed. The motion included approving
Okay.
one motion covered it all. So we're
All right.
done with the public hearing. Okay, Jennifer, is there any other business?
Not really, other than to say that recruitment, we do have, I think I said this last time, about a half a dozen applicants. In addition to Commissioner Lee applying to be appointed to a full term. They did agree at last Tuesday's issue session that Commissioners Schrader and Savas will be the two board members that are on the interview panel this time around. I just sent an email to their staff today to find out if they're just going to do that, or if they want me there, or if they want Tom there. So I don't have a response yet, but I would expect that we'll be setting up interviews here over the next week or two. And so hopefully we'll get Carrie's seat filled, as much as we hate to lose her. And I don't know yet, Brian, whether they will want to interview you again or not. Sometimes they interview everybody, but because it was so recent, it's possible they may not, but certainly we'll reach out if we need to schedule something.
Sure, let me know.
So that's about it, I think, as far as other business.
Well, I was looking at the calendar and it looks like we're done for the year.
Yeah, that is what it looks like. That is not true, but that is a little bit what it feels like right now. So we don't have anything immediate to schedule. There is an application in for plan amendment and zone change. I believe, don't quote me, I'm pretty sure it's another one where they're going to rural industrial. You've had a couple of those over the last, I don't know, 5 years. And I think it is another one where there's some historic commitment on the site to industrial use. And so I believe that's what the proposal is. The application came in about 3 weeks ago, but it's not complete. So they've been sent an incomplete notice as of last week. So once that's complete, then we will schedule that, but it's always a 35-day notice, before your hearing. So we wouldn't be seeing that before sometime this summer, I would say. I don't know exactly why it's incomplete, but I did check with Martha Fritzy today and she said that it was. So, so that's percolating. We are still, I think I mentioned last time, expecting an application for a plan amendment and a zone change for the site of the proposed recovery center. That some of you may have read about,
Right.
The county commission making a decision to move forward with that. The site they're looking at needs a zone change for at least some of what they want to do. So that I would expect, but the application's not in yet, but they are working on it. So I expect those two quasi judicial. We're still expecting a parks plan at some point for Lusher Farm Park. Some of you may remember when we did the park master plan amendments to allow that to move forward. But again, nothing's been submitted there. We've got 3 long-range projects that are percolating. One, like Scott and Karen were mentioning earlier, is the full transportation system plan project. We will have Jeff Owen, who's the principal transportation planner, come and give an overview kind of to kick off the project. We need to set a date for that. Tentatively looking at June, but I have to connect with Karen to see what she really thinks will work. I'd like to couple that with something else because it's probably not worth just getting you together just for that. And so there are 2 land use projects that we're working on, but one was delayed. We were needing to sign an intergovernmental agreement with the State Department of Land Conservation and Development. That just happened. And so that project's going to be kicking off to look at our standards for some of our natural resource protected areas and natural hazard areas related to the requirement in state law that our standards be only clear and objective for housing. So we need to make some amendments to our code. So that's going to be starting, and there are some touch points. There are, I believe, several touch points with the Planning Commission during the course of that project. So we'll need to set a date for the first one of those. But like I said, we literally just signed the agreement like last week. So need to kind of get our feet under us on that. And then there is Martha Fritzy's zoning and development ordinance diagnostic report project that you did hear about. Martha was here. I don't remember when exactly, but within the last year, to kind of give you a little overview of that. That they are, the consultants are at work, and we've been meeting with them. Martha's been meeting with them, and so we are going to have something to bring to you. But Martha's estimating early to midsummer. So I'm kind of hoping that either that one or the Clear and Objective Standards project might be able to be paired with this presentation on the transportation system plan and kind of give you a full agenda. So I can say for sure you will not meet. I would say you will not meet until June. We don't have anything for 2 weeks from now. I'm really thinking about it. Nothing's going to be ready by May. I think it's the 12th or something. And then the second meeting in May is Memorial Day, so we wouldn't be meeting then. So,
Okay.
so let's just call it for those. And I think we will have something to bring to you for June.
Great.
Okay.
Tammy, you had your hand raised.
Just a real quick question, actually, too, for Jennifer. I got a call from somebody out of Malala wanting to know, I know we're doing transportation system plan this year. Are we also, and I don't know what it's called, every 5 years we look at whether or not Metro has enough land within the UGB for 20 years worth of growth. Is that this year? It is not. Can you tell me when that is, or about? Just, I want to get back to her and let her know when.
See, of course, now it feels like they just did that, but what year was that, Karen?
1994.
It's every 6 years, but they do sometimes do a mid-cycle check-in at the 3-year mark.
Oh,
yeah. And I do think it was officially last year.
That's what I think too. I'm like, was it really just 2024? Because the years just go.
Yeah, yeah. But there is the UGB expansion process that's going on for Molalla right now, which is separate from and
we're
different.
not in Metro and Molalla, so
right. So it's they're 2 separate things.
Yeah.
Good point.
But and we're going to have to update the comprehensive plan when we update the UGB as well. So that'll be a big project too. So and then they'll slowly, like we updated the transportation system plan in 2018 or 19. Maybe it was 19. It was like a whole summer of meetings. And so those plans, even though they're going to need updated, they'll happen slower than like the comprehensive plan is something that will have to be updated soon, right? They haven't said anything. I'm just assuming because it just has to be to deal with the zoning for any lands they bring into the urban growth boundary.
Yeah, Molalla and Canby are both working. They're on very similar trajectories, and they're not going to finish at the same exact time, but they're both working on potential expansions of their urban growth boundaries and are kind of working through the steps. And so we've got staff on their technical committees. Karen and Martha have both been working with the cities on that. And so ultimately, yes, we will have to, the city does their part first. And once if they approve a UGB expansion, then the county has to make a corresponding amendment to its comprehensive plan. But we don't do that until the city's gone through their full process and kind of,
To
they've
use
said
your
this is what
term,
we want.
Jennifer, then, if that happens, is there a touch point with the planning commission?
Yeah, if it's, to amend our
Okay.
comp plan, yes. Yeah, it would
Okay.
come to you and then go to
Right.
the board. That's
All
correct.
right, and it would require a comp plan change if there was a UGB request change by a city.
Right. We just really, for us, it's a map update to just move the urban growth boundary line. There's not a lot of substance to what we do relative to what the cities are doing, but we are required, the state requires us to sort of coordinate, if you will, on that and make that corresponding change to our comp plan. So yes, you
Okay.
have a touch point, and we don't have any timing for that yet, but that is out there.
Okay, I just want to make sure I get back to her and give her the right answer, and that is exactly what I needed. The second and final question I had was, I have read and reread this at least a half a dozen times, that House Bill 3928, as you know, would.
Which one? There's too many bills this time, Tammy. I can't keep the numbers straight. Which one
Okay,
is it?
3928 is about developing on rural residential.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
You knew I'd be just a little bit interested in that one, but I have read it so many times, I couldn't, for $1,000, I couldn't tell you what it says. Can you give me this 2-sentence, what does this mean?
No, because I don't understand it either.
Oh,
what I
thank
can
you.
tell you
Oh.
is there were two bills. One's 3928. I don't remember what the other one was. Variations of the same idea, which is opening up a lot of rural land to potentially be divided. And they're, as I understand it, both dead for this session. That's the
Okay.
last thing we heard. Is that they're not moving. Now, don't quote me, but that's the last thing we heard from Association of Oregon Counties is that they're not going to move this session. But I think there are going to be discussions like in the off season, essentially, to talk about it. I understand there's policy questions, of course, and there's going to be very strong feelings on both sides of the policy question. Me being Switzerland here, my concern is I don't know what it means. And that was the biggest issue for us, was looking at the bills and saying, so I kind of think I sort of know what they're trying to say, but what is it really saying? And so I hope if it does come back, policy issues aside, that it's just a little more clear what's allowed as far as, is it something the county does? Is it optional? Is it that applicants can apply to do? It was a little unclear whether a county had to say, yes, we want to do this, or individual property owners could come in. It was unclear, at least with one of the bills, whether you could subdivide or whether they were just talking about building on existing lots. There was some language that it seemed to say they had to be 1 acre lots, like they couldn't be larger than that, which makes maybe some sense from a little bit from an efficiency standpoint of land. But obviously that can be problematic with septic systems. Is there public water, all the things. So we'll see where that all goes.
Thank you. I mean, that more than covered it. Thanks, Jennifer. I appreciate your help.
You bet.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes. ZDO 291.
Floodplain. I don't know, Murph. Is anybody from FEMA answering the phone when you call?
Up at any meeting. So yeah, I don't know.
Anybody left at FEMA?
All kidding aside, I really actually don't know if there's anybody left working in that particular program. We have not gotten a response. We emailed in mid-January asking some questions to the mailbox they told us to send questions to. We got a response saying, don't send questions, submit a request for technical assistance, which was really not what they had previously. They said they'd answer questions. So we went ahead and submitted that January 16th. We heard nothing. So about a week ago, I sent another request. And this time I didn't even get the auto, usually it's the auto, like the planner who sent the first one got an auto reply. This time I got nothing. So I don't actually know. The last communication that we've gotten from FEMA, like to everybody who like went to the webinars and all that, was I think January 29th. So I really don't know. And I haven't heard anything about the lawsuit. You know, there was a request for a preliminary injunction by the jurisdictions that sued FEMA. Have not heard that there's been a decision on that. I'm assuming there hasn't, because I think our council would have heard and shared that. So we're a little stuck. What's going to happen next? I've got a meeting, I think it's next week, to kind of circle back with upper management and the council, our county council, to assistant county council, to try to talk about, all right, do we feel any differently than we felt before about what the county's risk is? Should we go ahead and move forward with some code amendments, even if FEMA isn't going to tell us if they're okay or not? So that's kind of where we're at right now. It's just a little stuck.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish I had better information.
But I understand.
Commissioner Wilson, you're up. See your hands up.
Yeah, just a quick question, and it's a two-part question. And first off, let me say, Jennifer, you got a good staff, and they really do a good job. My question, though, is about your consultants. What is your budget for consultants, and how do you go about picking those? What's the process that's used? Do you get approval from the county commissioners? What is that process? You know, I know you have a limited amount of staff and you have to use some consultants.
Yeah, sorry, like somebody out my window is now making a bunch of noise, so I apologize to everybody. So it depends.
But I'm just curious as to what your
Yeah. So, and I'm going to have, Karen's probably going to have to help me out a little bit. I will give you like my general understanding. So the first thing is we in planning don't really have a budget per se for consultants. Like we don't start the year knowing, oh, we can spend this much just randomly. We can hire consultants. It's always tied to a particular project where we have submitted some kind of grant application and as part of that, it has now become, I mean, I won't even just say common, it's pretty much without exception that if Metro or the state is going to give us a grant, it's going to be primarily to hire a consultant. They allow some staff time capture, but generally there is a consultant requirement. And so how that gets approved depends. For instance, with the state on this one project I was just telling you about, the state contracts with the consultant. And then they just say, here, Clackamas County, this is the consultant. And the consultant actually has, like I said, the contract with the state. And so we're not involved at all. Other times, like with the Metro grant, there is a full RFP, request for proposal process that's run through the county's procurement department, where people get to submit and, you know, the whole thing where they have to file a written proposal and we do interviews and, you know, score the proposals and then select a consultant. But the budget for land use projects is really tied to whatever kind of grant funding we can get, because we don't just have money to hire consultants. On the transportation side, Karen, sometimes the county actually funds consultants for certain transportation work as opposed to it always being grant driven.
Yes, so we do have on the transportation side, there are what are called on-call consultants for some particular types of activities, such as kind of like what would I say? I would say more like our traffic counts or those type of activities where there's a specific job that needs to be done on a regular basis, that then we'll have a series of consultants that we can reach out to. But even as those are set up, we would go through a regular procurement process, and our procurement process has different pathways depending on the amount of money that we're expecting to spend. But otherwise, Jennifer kind of covered it for the planning side. You know, no on-call consultants. The consultants are really driven by the grant budget, and that we use the procurement process that is appropriate for the funding level that we have.
Yeah, and at certain funding levels, the board has to approve. Other thing, and there's like different height, so I can't sign a contract, but our department director, Dan Johnson, can sign certain contracts, and then I think county administrator, and then a lot of things go to the board. So it depends on the amount of money we're talking about. And I should say, I assumed you were talking about consultants to do like the type of planning work that, like Scott's project or zoning code amendments, those kind of things. The county does have standing contracts for land use hearings. So we do have 2 hearings officers that are on contract to, to make decisions on individual applications for things like conditional use permits and things like that, or listen to appeals. And that's just a standing, and there's an RFP process that we have to go through periodically every like 6 years, I think, to take proposals from new potential.
Yeah, well, the purpose of my question was that, you've got a good staff. And, I know they need to get other input for some things, but, your staff seems to be very good. And, I really appreciate the way they present projects and, the information they provide. I'm just curious as to what this consultant stuff we're doing for you, because you seem like you've got a good staff that's well educated and very knowledgeable.
Well, thanks, Michael. Karen should be laughing because I am the one who tends to be skeptical about hiring consultants and going out for grants and things like that. For the reasons that you say, that I think it's really hard, regardless of how good a consultant you are. It's really hard to come in and look at somebody else's code and try to understand it and figure, and give back feedback that isn't it's difficult. That said, sometimes it's good to have somebody look at it who is able to think outside the box and step back and not be tied to the way we've always done things, so I think there can be some value. But to some extent, we need consultants to stretch because we don't have enough permanent staff. And so if we can get a grant from so it's not the county funding it, it allows us sometimes to have them do public outreach, to have them go and look at how other jurisdictions are doing things and bring us ideas that we maybe haven't considered and things like that. So there can be some value add for that kind of work.
Okay, I just have a couple of closing comments. One, this is Carrie, I believe Carrie's last meeting with us. So we're all sad to see her go. However, I reached out to Carrie after the last meeting and asked if she would be interested in having a little send-off. Mostly, I wanted to hear all about her trip that she's planning, but also, since we don't get to meet in person very often, an excuse to get together. So she had agreed that sometime in May, she would be up for a little gathering at a place that folks, if you're interested, you might want to join us. Kind of like, many of you don't know Brian, but similar to what we did for Brian. Although, if there's interest, I'm going to propose the location because it just opened in Milwaukee. The old city hall has been converted into a Freem brew pub and coffee shop. And
Nice.
being a fan of Freem beer, and I haven't been there yet. I'm going to propose that maybe that be the venue. But if other people have other ideas or that's not convenient for them, I'm open to suggestion. But anyway, I just thought I'd give you all heads up. I'll send an email out after the meeting. So those of you that would like to send her off and hear about her great adventure that she's about to endeavor, that sounds like a lot of fun. So anyway, so thank you, Carrie.
Tom.
It's been a pleasure working with you. I wish you could have stayed on longer, and who knows, maybe you'll come back like Tammy did.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Thank you, Tom. I think I just wanted to, I mentioned last time we got together how much I enjoyed working with all of you and learning from each of you. And especially the county staff, Jennifer. You know, Michael, your comments are spot on. Jennifer has Class A staff. If you were a bond rating, you'd be A plus, triple plus. So really appreciate all of your efforts and, you know, all the volunteer hours that you give to the county. I think our county is better for all your efforts, and really enjoyed my, I don't know, 5.5 years of foreign something. So Brian, I'll tell you, I came in to fill in somebody else's term also, and my second interview was more difficult than the first interview. So I thought it was going to be a slam dunk, and the commissioner at the time was not having any of it. So just
I'll be
but
prepared.
you'll be fine. So yes, I will miss all of you, but not very much because I'll be having a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. I guess no one has anything else to say, so I guess we'll adjourn the meeting, and we'll see you sometime in May. If not,
We'll miss you.
in June at our next commission meeting.
I'll miss you.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Carol.
Good night.